Hey, good morning, everyone. This is Dr. Joseph A. Caps coming back to you again for another episode of Dancing with the Darkness. If you're a first time listener on Spotify or you're checking out our YouTube channel, we're excited to have you here and thank you so much for listening today. This is a kind of a raw, unfiltered website podcast that we talk about CPTSD. It's very raw and unfiltered. We talk about not just the implications of what it's like to live with CPTSD and survive CPTSD in a clinical way, but we're also going to talk about it in a very experiential way, as I am a survivor myself. And still deal with a lot of the same things, even as I am healing. And I sit before you today to do this podcast as not only a clinician and a traumatologist, but also as a chaplain and a pastoral counselor. And like I said, as a survivor that still understands these struggles, it is a daily thing. And so we want to talk about not just the struggles, but we want to talk about interventions. We want to talk about things that you can do to ease the symptoms and the pressures and all of the things that happen with CPTSD. And so we're so excited to have you here. And if you're a return listener, I just want to thank you so much for tuning in every week and supporting the channel. And Also, your comments are absolutely wonderful. Those of you that are sharing your experiences and being raw and vulnerable in your comments, I truly, truly cherish that. And it's things like this that really do build this community. That is what we're trying to do, or what I'm trying to do with this channel and with this podcast, is actually build a community of survivors, and this be a safe place where we can get on here and comment without judgment, without persecution, but actually with some genuine understanding and empathy, which means a whole lot to me. Because more than anything, this is about healing, it is about hope, and it is about you learning how to thrive and live a wonderful, beautiful life where we have turned our pain into purpose and we are living a good life. And so, without further ado, if you could do us a favor, the only way that we get reach on this channel, the only way that it's going to reach someone today that needs it, is your support. So please like the video if you enjoyed it. Please comment if something speaks to you today about this video. We absolutely love your comments. And if you're up to it, please subscribe to the channel. And that way you won't miss any content. You'll get the new video every week when it drops. And once again, thank you so much for your support. Thank you for listening. We appreciate you very much. So today, what I want to talk about, and I know that we touch on this a lot in most of our videos, and the reason why is because this is such a common thing. One of the most common things, the most common struggles that we have with CPTSD is in regard to relationships, whether they be intimate, whether they be friends, whether they be in your workplace. We have a big problem with relationships because of the way the developmental trauma, whether it be neglect, whether it be abuse as a child, polytrauma, it definitely affects our relationships. It puts us in a very defensive posture. It puts us in a codependent posture. It puts us in a fawning posture, fight or flight, freeze. All of these things happen because of the way that we developed physically, mentally, and spiritually. And we bring this into adulthood and we establish patterns. And so the only way that we're going to get out of this, and the only way that we're going to start focusing on doing better, is first we have to understand the why. And we talk a whole lot about the why. And we also talk a lot about the who. If you recall in my videos, it's kind of a military thing, but I call it the 5 whiskeys of trauma: the who, what, where, when, why. And these are all very important. And we go over all of this in my complex trauma profiling system, which in turn gets people into a holistic treatment all the way around. That's what that measurement is for. And so the trauma discovery protocol that I created is all about a holistic treatment for trauma, and it's individualized. There is not one single person that is going to have the same treatment model with this, because it is a unique profiling system. And the reason why is I need you to understand that first we have to know who we are, and then we need to start looking at the why. Okay, we need to start looking at the why we do certain things, we behave certain ways, and why we show up in relationships like we do. So I want to talk about a reoccurring pattern for most of us. We see a lot of relationships that are on again, off again. We see a lot of relationships that are between a narcissist and somebody that is more of a fawner. We see a lot of people pleasing. We see a lot of these behaviors from childhood that get carried on into relationships. We see a ton of codependency. And so I want us to understand these patterns in depth. And I'm just going to give you some scenarios that may fit one of your patterns in relationships. Most of the time, this is kind of how we feel. We feel like it's a different person, a different face, a different name, but somehow it ends up being the exact same fight, okay, with every partner. We have that gut wrenching feeling of being abandoned, unseen, unheard, and completely misunderstood because we keep ending up with the wrong partners. Okay. So if you feel like you're starring in this movie, right? If you feel like you're in this movie role where you are constantly in this tragic sequel, relationship part one, relationship part two, relationship part three, and they just continue to look like the same thing. You're the starring role of this victim or of this person that is dysfunctional in this relationship. So if you feel like that, um, it's understandable and it's relatable. Okay, maybe you end up in a new relationship and you thought that you left all of that stuff behind, and then it shows up again. You're not going crazy. Okay, this is a pattern, and there's reasons why this happens. Okay, so I'm going to give you some signs that probably fit most of you out there as far as patterns in your relationships. And this isn't about judgment. This isn't about making you feel bad about it. It's about you understanding why these things happen. Why do I keep starring in this role of this tragic relationship story? This is why. Okay. And so we're going to start understanding why we do things. And that's going to give us some traction on how to get out of these behaviors and to start making some new habits that are better for us. Okay. So the first one is, a lot of us are drawn to emotionally unavailable partners because of how our parents were. If our parents were emotionally unavailable, there's a certain level of comfort there because we feel like we can navigate that relationship, even though we desperately want the opposite of that. Okay. So somebody that is emotionally distant or they're inconsistent, um, this often mirrors that childhood experience with our parents. You know, we basically learned that love is something you must earn through effort. As an adult, we start to pursue partners who reinforce this belief because it's familiar. Okay. We end up deepening this wound in us by doing so. And we start being left feeling even more abandoned and unseen each time that this happens. Okay. So we're literally putting salt in a wound. We're deepening the wound. We're making it even more severe. Okay. And cognitively it's reinforcing. If we try to do cognitive behavioral therapy where we're trying to uh, go against the evidence, right? We're trying to use the evidence to prove our belief or validate our belief. Then honestly, it can do even more damage because we literally can say, hey, well, here's your evidence. Every single relationship I get in, this happens. Okay. Because we're not looking at the why that it happens. Okay. So we need to start looking at the somatics here and the details of why these things happen. Okay. The second thing I want to talk about is our arguments, our fights that we have with the person in our relationship. They end up seeming very eerily familiar. It's almost like deja vu. Um, One of the things we need to do in our relationships is we need to really pay attention to our arguments. And if this is the same argument that's been happening with every partner, it's the same pattern, it's the same trend, then we have to start looking at the why. Why is that happening? Okay. Um, do these arguments feel scripted? Are you reenacting something like the explosive yelling or the silent treatment that you received or that you had as a child? Because these are all things that we find ourselves comfortable in, even though we desperately want to get out of that. Okay. This is an unconscious attempt to resolve old family issues that we've never resolved. And we just continue to run in the hamster wheel and do these things. Okay. Um, Your nervous system even gets to a point where it prefers predictable chaos. Okay. It becomes easier to just have the predictable chaos, the scripted chaos for your nervous system than an unfamiliar piece. And we talk about this a lot in these videos that we have a really hard time understanding what peace is and embellishing in that and enjoying in that because our nervous system is so used to being jacked up all the time. Okay. So if we can start to recognize our fighting style and understand that it's a learned behavior, it's not something that we're choosing, it's literally a conditioned learned behavior. This is our first step to changing that. Okay. Another sign is that we have non existent boundaries. We also talk a lot about this. We have to have boundaries, and we need to understand that boundaries are not selfish. Boundaries are self preservation. And honestly, if we don't self preserve, we can't really be there or help anyone else either. So we need to understand that saying no, when this fills us with dread and contempt, we need to understand that, no is a full sentence. No is a complete sentence, and that it's okay. Okay, to say no. You know, we don't want to, um, feel bad if we cancel plans. Okay, we don't want to always have to apologize, for our own feelings, or say, I'm fine. I mean, I am famous for that. I am famous for people saying, "How are you doing?" And I say, "I'm fine," and I'm not really fine, but I'm conditioned that I don't want to go deeper. I don't want to say, well, today, Bob, because I'm conditioned that most people don't really give a damn. And so I just say fine, and they feel good because they asked me. So that's their check mark for the day. And then I move on and I just eat it. Okay. And a lot of us do that. And in superficial situations, that's not a bad thing because we don't want to overshare because a lot of times with CPTSD we do. But those that are close to us and intimate with us and actually love us and really do care, we need to be able to open up and talk about these things and process. And that's actually how we really build a healthy relationship, is to do that. Um, we can't scream inside and have all of this internal conflict because we're afraid of external conflict. Okay. This often starts in childhood once again, where our needs are ignored or met with disapproval. So every time we needed something or we needed help or anything like that as a child, we were ridiculed or punished or yelled at or screamed at. And so we start to learn to be very independent and we start to internalize everything. And we even start to feel guilt and shame if we have a need or a weakness. And that's how that pattern goes. Um, we learned that to be loved, we had to be very easy and very low maintenance. And we carry this into relationships as well. And we intentionally try to make ourselves low maintenance and very, very easy for the other person. We're hyper focused on not being a burden or any kind of stressor for that person. And, unfortunately, we need to understand that healthy relationships are going to have stress. They're going to have emotions. They're going to have feelings. They're going to have good times and they're going to have bad times. And holistically, that actually makes a healthy relationship for us to be able to experience that because we can strengthen and build and bond just as much through the bad as the good if we have a healthy relationship. And it's very, very hard for us with CPTSD to do that. So in adulthood, because of these um, areas where we don't feel like we should have any needs, we need to be easy and low maintenance. The problem is that we have non-existent boundaries and people end up stomping all over us, and that's just the way that it happens. um, what if you're in a relationship where you're with somebody that actually acts like your parent? Okay, this happens as well. Okay, this is a realization that stops you in your tracks. Your partner criticizes you in the exact same tone, condescending or belittling, or with men it's emasculation from a female, um, even in the same contemptual tone. Okay, this is a big wake up call. Okay, they dismiss our feelings with the same exact phrase. This isn't coincidence. Okay, this is once again a pattern. It's a psychological phenomenon, and we call it repetitive compulsion. Okay, your subconscious is in a desperate attempt to heal, has sought out and found someone who perfectly replicates the unresolved dynamics of your childhood. Okay. So you're not crazy. This is something that happens with CPTSD, and we just want to be aware of it so that we can understand ourselves. Okay. There's this hidden, unconscious hope there that this time you can finally get it right. You can just make this critical partner finally approve of you, finally accept you. It can, you can make this distant partner finally choose you to make you first, and symbolically win the love and the validation you never got in the past. Okay, so this is why we do this. Uh, Unfortunately, this is a game that we can never win. The dynamic is fundamentally set up to repeat the original heartbreak that we had as a child, and not resolve it. And so, once again, that hamster wheel, we continue to go back to the same patterns and the same wounds and the same behaviors. Okay. So, we're not just fixing the past, you're just reliving it in a different way, with a different actor in that tragic movie that you keep starring in. Okay. Um, we talked about codependency a little bit at the beginning. We need to understand what that is. We get trapped in these codependency patterns. And codependency literally means that you are completely intertwined with your partner's emotions. Okay. So this is, we don't want to misconceptualize empathy or being a highly sensitive person here. We need to understand that codependency goes in an even deeper direction. We become completely entangled with the other person's emotions. Okay. And we carry all of it. Okay. So their mood instantly becomes our mood. Okay. Their bad day ruins our evening. Um, we might find ourselves checking our phone constantly for their text, or we can't make any decision without their input. This dynamic often stems from childhood, where we had emotional neglect. Okay. We had a lot of emotional neglect, and that's why this happens. If you didn't get the validation that you needed, you grew up in an empty emotional vacuum. Okay. And so we look to our partner to fill that void. This creates a dangerous setup where you might tolerate things like mistreatment, neglect, disrespect, criticism, just to get a crumb of their approval, because that approval feels like survival. Okay. A healthy relationship is being with someone that they know that we seek those things and need those things, and they naturally, without any prompting, give us that approval, give us that validation. Okay. And then we in turn give it back to them. Okay. And so it's okay to be empathic with your partner. It's okay to be highly sensitive with your partner, but we just can't make it our own. We have to let the each other have our emotions and process them, and we can walk beside each other, and we can help each other, and we can share the load, but we can't completely take it on and be codependent, because then it's not healthy. Okay. So the next one is, we experience some very intense emotional reactions. Okay. So maybe what would be considered a small disagreement, it feels like a world ending disaster. Okay. We might react with disproportionate anger, crushing sadness, or just a complete emotional shutdown, or something over something minor. Okay. And, this is what we call emotional dysregulation, which is very common with CPTSD. It is a common result of childhood trauma. We basically grew up in a very unsafe or unpredictable environment with, you know, a nervous system that got wired for chaos. It's wired for high alert all the time. So the normal ups and downs that we experience as an adult in a relationship can feel like a direct threat all the time. We are constantly in a defensive posture. We are constantly looking for danger. We're going to do a video soon about neuroception, which is a big thing with CPTSD, where we constantly are scanning. Our brain is literally scanning for problems and trouble all the time. Okay. These things, also, when we have these disproportionate reactions, they actually trigger us, and they make us, have a much bigger response to something that really is not that big a deal. because it's not just the present moment that we're reacting to. That's what we need to understand. It's about all of the past wounds also. And, you know, every time this happens, it's like all of those wounds never healed just get ripped right back open. Okay, so that's why we react so powerfully, because we're not reacting to just one thing. It's a lot that we're reacting to, and we need to understand that's why it's so disproportionate. Okay, and this is where that cycle starts to lock into place. Okay, the next sign is that we get to the point where we accept poor treatment. Okay, this is why many of us have ended up with narcissistic partners and everything else, or partners that replicate our parents' behaviors. We get to this part where, all of these childhood wounds, from criticism, neglect, or abuse, they have left some really deep scars, and this has really affected our self worth. And they create a core belief in us that we are fundamentally unlovable or flawed. Okay. As a result, we start accepting poor treatment all the time because, on a subconscious level, we feel like this is normal and this is what we deserve. Maybe your partner forgets your birthday for the third year in a row, and you tell yourself, oh, it's fine. This is, it's not a big deal. I'm not really a big birthday person anymore. It doesn't matter. Okay. Or maybe they make a cutting remark, um, about your career or something that you value or you're passionate about. And you silently just, you know, wonder if maybe they're right. Maybe this criticism is right. Maybe they are consistently late or unavailable or dismissive, and you make excuses for them. You say, because fundamentally, this is the best I can get, so I just need to accept it. It's not about having low standards, honestly. It's about the wound convincing you that you don't deserve standards at all. Okay? This is more inner critic stuff. Every time we accept this treatment, we're literally reinforcing that painful childhood belief that we are not worthy of respect, care, and consistent love. Another sign is that we swing between panic and pushing away. Okay, so this is a disorganized attachment strategy that we've talked about before. So we're bouncing back and forth between anxious and avoidant all the time. Okay. The slightest sign of distance from our partner can send us into panic. But at the same time, when they offer genuine closeness, we start to feel trapped and desperate to push them away. It is a terrible pattern that happens. And the reason why is because we've learned in the past that love is unreliable, and love, we associate it with pain and loss and grief. We fear abandonment, but at the same time, intimacy feels equally terrifying. So we have this mentality, please don't leave me and get away from me at the same exact time. So our nervous system is just going crazy. Okay. The last one I want to go over is that, sometimes we mistake trauma bonding for chemistry. This push pull creates a relationship roller coaster. So we'll have intense fights followed by tearful reconciliations. People will break up and get back together repeatedly. The highs are euphoric. It's like getting a huge dopamine and oxytocin dose, and it's absolutely euphoric. The drama actually feels like passion, but this isn't love. It's trauma bonding. Our brain actually becomes addicted to the cycle itself. You know, the makeup sex, the tearful apologies, the relief after chaos. The nervous system was wired this way for unpredictability because of our childhood. Many of us had the same thing. Our parents would abuse us, and then they would shower us with love and affection. The important thing to understand here is that these are all patterns that are because of our childhood and because of our development and because of the way that we developed. Okay. So, the number one takeaway from this video that I want you to have is that we need to not have shame or guilt about these patterns. Okay. All we're doing by doing that is we're reinforcing, the inner and the outer critic. And this isn't going to resolve anything. Okay. So the first step, like we said, is understanding who we are, and then we start looking at the why. Okay. And so if any of these things resonated with you in your relationships, okay, if you're still struggling, if you've found ways to get better with these things, please share in the comments, because you have no idea, there may be another listener, there may be another person reading these comments, and you may help them tremendously. And I really want your input. I understand these struggles intimately, and I understand what it takes to heal from these things. And the number one thing is we have to understand why we do these things. Okay. And when we start tying that back to our childhoods, we can start to tear apart that tangled web that deceives us into thinking that everything has to remain the way it was in childhood. Okay. We start to understand that we can have boundaries and that we can set standards, and that everyone deserves to be loved and respected and treated in a good way. We all deserve that. And so I really hope this video spoke to you today, or if you're listening on Spotify, I really hope it spoke to you. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out a lot, and it gets it out there to other people. And there's a bunch of us out there that are dealing with this. And so uh, thank you so much for your support. Until next time, I look forward to your comments, and we'll see you next time. God bless.